everybody. Welcome to the second episode of the VanHack Podcast. We are very lucky to have a special guest joining us from New York City, Adrian Avendanu, who is the founder of the LATAM Tech Meetup and has been working with connecting the North American and South American startup scenes for the last, 7 months, but probably longer than that. So thanks for having us or taking the time to speak with us, Adrian.
No worries. Happy to be here.
Great. So I just want to quickly start off by letting people know a little bit about your background. Maybe you can talk about how you got involved in connecting the North American and South American startup scenes, and maybe just quickly what you've been up to in terms of startups.
Yeah, sure. So I started my first company 6 years ago, literally, in Ireland. And I'm a developer. I've been coding for 10 years. So I've been coding software that connects people face to face, literally, for 6 years. But it was not until last year that I was in Startup Chile, the Startup Chile program. And while I was there, I was very impressed by the tech ecosystem that was developing in South America. And I got to travel to Argentina, Brazil, and I was just very impressed by, number one, the startups there, the ideas, the energy, and the user adoption of technology, how users were embracing tech, social media, and so on. And also, while I was there, friends from New York City were constantly sending me emails asking me for introductions with people in South America, right? Mm-hmm. So then after all of that, I came back to New York City and I was like, well, there's definitely a very strong need to create more of a solid bridge. Initially, I thought between South America and New York City. Mm-hmm. So I started an event first, and from there it just blew up in New York City. And instead of calling it, I first called it South America Tech Meetup, but then they were like, well, you're excluding Mexico and Central America, right? Mm-hmm. Which are very important countries.
Definitely.
So then I changed it to Latin America Tech Meetup. Mm-hmm. So I just grew in New York, and then somebody suggested to do it in San Francisco, and even grew bigger there. So now in 7 months I have like 1,300 strong community, and also I'm getting kind of smaller curated gatherings with funds who have a focus in Latin America as well. So
very cool.
So yeah, that's been what I've been doing outside of the software realm, connecting people, right? So
definitely fantastic. So maybe can you give a couple of examples of people who have come up to these meetups from Latin America, from Brazil, and have had some kind of success, or been able to raise money, or something that it would be considered a tangible step forward?
So a few months ago in September, I had 10 companies from Brazil coming over to New York City, and they basically presented their products like a demo presentation to the the Latin America Tech Meetup. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting, these companies were not just startups; they were actually bigger sized companies with actual millions in revenue, and they had no presence whatsoever in New York City or in the United States, right? Mm-hmm. So they had strong intentions in expanding into the US. So basically through the meetup, they presented, and they also had they had a lot of meetings set up after with either partners, lawyers, potential hires as well, and people like that. Just to give you an example of some companies that came about, it was through Centria Partners, which is like a boutique investment firm in Brazil. And yeah, some of the companies, the initiative was through Centria Partners, which is like a boutique investment advisor in Brazil, and as well as Subtex, a Brazilian government agency. So
very cool.
All of these companies, it's just 10 of them, I can't remember their names, because I wasn't there, because I was doing the event in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. So I had people helping me for that event. And that's just in very concrete examples as well. Another example was last month in San Francisco. I brought Startup Brazil director and Brazil innovators and Apex Brazil together with other individuals from Silicon Valley who have a Latin America tech focus. So I basically got 25 people together, including them, to connect with other investors who were based out of the Bay Area. So
fantastic.
So yeah, I've been basically connecting people with people. And what has happened after, it's unknown to me because I made the initial connection happen, right?
For sure.
And haven't asked them back with like, hey, what happened with your meeting? So
yeah.
maybe later on they will tell me, oh yeah, I met in this and this and this. But I mean, right now I've been connecting to so many people, so I'll know later on what has been happening from those connections.
Yeah, I'm sure the information will come to you. One thing that we talk about a lot in our course in VanHack is the power of networking, especially when able to get a job. You seem to be someone who has been networking for a long time and is very good at it. Do you have any tips as to how to best go about meeting people and going from that initial meeting to maybe a referral or introduction or something like that?
I like that question. I haven't been asked that question in some time. Well, in like a few months. So, so I've learned so much about that. So yeah, number one consideration: you're dealing with humans. They are people. That's, I think, number one. You gotta understand that you are the other end. It's another person, another human, and treat them like that. They're not just the means to your end. I mean, you might be seeing it like that, but the art of relationship building is create a connection with that other person. And usually that connection, sure, it's a business connection, but the personal part matters a shit ton.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
Meaning, if they like you, you like them back. The likelihood of something developing further, it's exponentially higher. So I think a lot of startup-y people, they treat relationships as if they're transacting with a robot or with another machine or something like that. Very transactional type relationships.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, that's kind of lame, and I don't think long-term, like, for example, if a VC is going to give you a big check, it's not, unless you're the hottest company on the planet, he would just write you a check like that. But otherwise, it's a dream. You need to develop a strong relationship with those people, and it comes at all levels. So the tips is like, treat your connections, or don't just think of network. No, think of building a relationship with people. I think that's part one. And also help. Don't just take from your network. Help your network. Meaning, think of how you can introduce somebody or offer whatever small help you can to your network. That's second. So it's very important to nurture those connections that you already have.
Yeah, definitely.
By trying to help them somehow. So I think those kind of are two basic things. There's more, but obviously on top of my head, those two are very important.
One thing that I'll add that you actually did was keep in touch and follow up. You and I met a while ago, actually, over a year ago, and you sent me an email just now, New Year's catch up, because it was I think January 1st or 2nd you sent that email in. And that I think is super important. There's so many people that you speak with for a little bit and then lose touch, and then if you don't catch up with them in 6 months or in a year, you kind of lost the opportunity. So definitely staying in touch is great. And,
yes,
and you did that.
Stay in touch but actually it takes time. Well, I'm the extreme case. Basically, I had to catch up with over 400 people. And I had an Excel sheet, but I don't send group messages. I try to personalize each and one of them because I care. I want to see what they're up to. So I spend a lot of time, obviously, going through almost 400 people sending him individual messages. But obviously, it pans out because number one, I like meeting people and I like keeping in touch and I like having friends all over the world and that kind of stuff.
For sure. Do you want to maybe share a little bit about your tactics? We actually teach to have a hit list in our course of people you'd like to meet and kind of the companies you're targeting. And we actually say do a spreadsheet with their names and company information and notes. Is that something similar to what you do, or how does your tactic work?
Hit list as in to get in touch with people that you want to get in touch?
Yeah, exactly. Like these are the 10 companies and people inside those companies that I want to talk with in order to get a job.
Yeah. So basically, it's just you got to start small, meaning with the ask. What you're asking for has to be small first. You can't send a cold email expecting in return a big ask, meaning a cold email, hey, can you give me a job in this amazing position that you have? Sure, you might get lucky, but usually cold emails asking for a big thing, it never works out. Usually you will not get an answer. So it might be easier to send a small request, meaning, hey, would you give me feedback to something that I wrote from something that I learned, or would you give me feedback to XXX thing that I'm been thinking about? Just ask for small things first,
right?
And then you start kind of building a relationship from there. At least they respond back, right? So if they respond, that's a good start. And then increase the ask, right? Instead of just asking for feedback, hey, then I learn a lot about your company and I'll be interested in maybe have a quick chat, 15 minutes, 10-minute chat with you about your experience, so you can keep increasing the ask.
Yeah, that's a good idea, kind of building it up as you go and build a relationship.
Exactly. So, and also super short emails, super short, 3-4 lines max. People, I'm still shocked to me, like long-time entrepreneurs send essays as emails. I'm like, you're fucking kidding me. Who's going to read that? Especially if they're busy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like you say, it should be like, hello, Peter. The reason of my email is to ask you if you would like to chat with me for 10 minutes. That's question mark. Immediately you're asking why they should respond. And then the second line should be why they should do that. Oh, this is because I recently read a blog about you and I'm very interested in stargazing myself too, and not just been doing it for the last few months. Hope you can chat later on. Hope we can connect, Adrian. That's it,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's just a clean, like a very simple example of how to reach out to people that you don't know, right?
Fantastic. Maybe want to transition a little bit more into the kind of differences between Latin America and North America, just up here. In your experience, what have you seen as maybe some of the key differences for someone coming from Latin America to North America that they have to keep in mind in a kind of business etiquette point of view? The way you should conduct with meetings or any kind of thing that you've seen as a difference that you can share and maybe something that people should keep in mind when they're coming up here to North America?
There's many. But just to think of a few. Well, number one is how business is conducted in North versus South America, right? There's very key differences in terms of business, right? But let's talk business first. Relationships are obviously still a little same but different. But in terms of business, North Americans, they're a culture for which they call it low context culture. What that means is if you ask for something, you have to be very explicit. You can't be implicit about it, right? And I think Latin American cultures are more high context type culture. What that means is the ask is it's not explicit, it's more implicit, right? So what that means, I think, and it's clear, I see it in Mexico and I see it all of Latin America, right? Possibly a little bit less in Argentina but people are nowhere near as direct in Latin America as they are in North America.
Definitely.
For as a business sense, you have to be very clear and concise of what is that you're asking for, or what is it that you want. You have to be very clear. If you're not clear, people are confused, and if they're confused, they lose interest. So, but in Latin America, when you're too direct, people are like, whoa, you know. People like to warm up a little bit more, and as business goes, you know, they like to build a little bit of a relationship first, which is fine, and then kind of start with an ask, right? But over here, North America is much more. The ask has to be very clear and specific,
For sure.
and I think that's the big learning curve for a lot of Latin Americans coming to North America. Is like they're not too used to being too direct, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, well, I think that's we've come to the end of our interview, of our conversation. Gotten a lot of good tips from you, Adrian. Thanks. And any kind of where can people find you? What are some your websites, your projects? I know you have something about language learning coming up. Maybe you want to share about that?
Yeah. So my email is adrian@peoplehunt.me. My Twitter handle is amonter5, and the website for the meetup is latamtechmeetup.com, and same for Twitter handle, latamtech, just like that.
Fantastic.
And so that's my first project, and soon, and also I'll be launching an app to help people learn a language with somebody in the same city. That's going to be called Language Hunt. So those are two things.
Language Hunt. I'll definitely keep an eye out for that, because I think a lot of our audience will want to learn English, improve their English, and Language Hunt could be a great way for them to do that. So thanks again, Adrian. Really appreciate you taking the time, and we'll be in touch soon.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me.